and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, February 24th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, it is our relief pitcher preview. We'll talk saves, holds, sparps, strategy, ADP, try and predict who will lead each team in saves, and then we'll wrap up with sleepers, breakouts, and busts. Chris, your favorite. Are you ready?
Always ready to talk about relief pitchers, which is not the silliest position in fantasy sports at all. And I don't know why anybody would even say that.
All right. Let's start with the state of saves. Last year, Carlos Estevez led all of baseball with 42 saves. Robert Suarez led the National League with 40, and they were the only two with 40-plus saves. We actually had 8 last season with 30-plus saves and 21 who had at least 20 saves. In 2024, it was the same number, 2 with 40, 8 with 30, but 22 with 20 saves. And then in 2023, only 1 with 40. But that year we had 12 with 30-plus saves and 23 with 20 saves. So I think we were spoiled a bit in 2023. That looks like the outlier here. Every year is different depending on manager tendencies and who holds on to the job, which closers are traded at the deadline. But, Scott, I think a fair expectation is what we've seen the last 2 years. Around 8 names who will get 30-plus saves and around 20 who will get us 20-plus saves.
It probably will work out similarly this year. The path it takes to that distribution is a little difficult to see right now. I think the haves and have-nots, I think that gap there is pretty wide. Like the high-end closers, it seems like they're more prevalent this year. My top tier, my elite tier at closer is the longest it's ever been. But then it gets really thin in the middle, and then there's a pile at the end of teams that we're really just guessing. We're really just guessing who the front runner for saves is, and none of the options are all that attractive, which is why we're having to guess. It seems like there are more of those teams this close to the start of the season than usual, and yet there are also more closers that I would describe as elite. So it makes for a challenge, I think, especially in deeper leagues. You might have to pay a premium to secure some amount of saves that'll just keep you afloat, even if you're like me and you like to supplement off the waiver wire with saves, trusting that there is going to be an incredible amount of turnover. There always is, but even you in those deeper leagues, you can't fall so far behind that there's just no hope of even making up ground if you do happen to score one off the waiver wire.
Yeah, I think the gap between the elites and really even the next tier, let alone everyone else, it kind of feels like there's the elites, and Scott, and your tiers, I think you have 7 names there, you said? I'm not even sure
6.
anyone... 6? Yeah. I'm not sure anyone else even belongs in the next tier. Like, that next tier, you've got David Bednar, Devin Williams, and Raisel Iglesias. I think they're all moderately interesting, but very, very risky for guys that you do have to expend pretty sizable draft capital on. David Bednar, I suppose, didn't lose his job last year, but Raisel Iglesias and Devin Williams sure did.
Well, Bednar did.
Bednar did after the first week of the season. Yeah, that's right.
In April, yeah.
So,
but
yeah,
he was awesome. He was awesome.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like there's much competition. Yeah, but
I don't.
The second tier of closers all lost their jobs last year. That's unusual, I would say.
Iglesias did briefly and finished the year strong. Bednar did briefly and finished the year strong. Obviously, there are more questions for that group: the Bednar, Devin Williams, Raisel Iglesias. I have Josh Hader in there too. His concerns are health related, obviously. There are more concerns for that group than the previous group, which is why they're distinct tiers. But I mean, they have long histories as closers, and I would still feel pretty secure with them as my number one. It's after that where things get really dicey.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of think you kind of have to feel secure with them, because if you don't feel secure with those three, like you said, it gets even worse. But
Well, just a year ago, we all would have been thrilled with Devin Williams and Raisel Iglesias as our number one closer. And we have a lot of reason for optimism about them going into next season, given some of the things they worked on to overcome the issues they had last year.
Mm-hmm. Scott, to your point about the haves and the have-nots, I mean, look, every draft is different, and we'll go over Fantasy Pros ADP later on, but I've been in draft and hold leagues or deeper leagues where, I mean, closers get pushed way, way up. I mean, I think people feel a little bit of that stress. Again, like the deeper you go into the, depending on the format, where they feel they need to get one of those lockdown closers. And you see crazy stuff right now, like a closer in round 2 or round 3. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we are feeling a little bit of that, have and have not right now in the closer pool. I mentioned a little bit earlier manager tendencies and how they can affect how many closers and how many saves we get throughout the course of a season. I did want to quickly just mention the new managers this offseason and how I think they might handle their respective bullpen. So Skip Schumacher is the manager of the Rangers now. It seemed like he always wanted a set closer when he was the manager of the Marlins a few years back. Walt Weiss is the Braves' new manager. He was their bench coach before this, and they've already named Raisel Iglesias the closer, and they typically always had just a set closer as long as he was the bench coach there. Craig Albernaz is the new manager of the Orioles. He came over from the Guardians, where they had a set closer, and the Orioles signed Ryan Helsley this offseason, so it looks like he will be the guy there. Warren Schaefer took over as the Rockies' interim manager last year. He ended the season with Victor Vodnik locked in as their closer. Hopefully picks up where he left off. Honestly, it might not matter because it's the Rockies. Kurt Suzuki, first-time manager with the Angels. He's been a special assistant to the GM in the Angels organization since 2023. Kind of a confusing situation there. Lots of options in their bullpen. Derek Schultzen is the Twins' new manager. He typically had a set closer during his time with the Pirates, but I'm not sure the Twins have that guy right now. The Pirates kept Don Kelly around as their manager. He ended last season with Dennis Santana in the role, and it looks like that will be the case at least to start 2026. The Padres hired former reliever Craig Stammen, and they have Mason Miller, so we know what's going on there. The Giants hired Tony Vitello from the collegiate ranks, and college bullpen usage is very different. I don't think there's anything we could draw from that. The Giants bullpen does not look very good, but I guess Ryan Walker looks like the incumbent front runner. And Blake Butera, first-time manager hired by the Nationals. He previously managed in the Rays minor league system and then served as their assistant field coordinator and senior director of player development. So I don't know if that means anything, but he is coming from the Rays, and they typically use a committee, but not entirely sure there. We'll go through all the bullpens a little bit later on. Let's talk about the state of holds here, because I know a lot of players and a lot of people listening to this podcast play in leagues with either holds or saves plus holds as a category. The distribution of holds is different from saves. Multiple relievers can earn a hold in a game while only one reliever can get a save. As a result, we usually see less on the high end for holds, but we see a thicker middle here. So lots more names with like 10 and 20 plus holds than we typically see with saves leaders. Last year, the holds leader was Abner Uribe with 37. We had 6 names with 30 plus holds, 33 with 20 plus holds. In 2024, it was Brian Abreu who led the league with 38 holds. We had 8 with 30 plus holds, 25 with 20. And then in 2023, Hector Neris and Yennier Cano were tied for the league lead with 31 holds, only 3 with 30 holds that season, but 28 with 20 plus holds. So, Chris, this will sound obvious, but in a league like that, I typically just target talented relievers on good teams. Mm-hmm. More opportunities for wins, more opportunities for holds. And it really flattens out the reliever pool because you don't have to focus so much on role. You could just draft the most talented relievers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the best argument in favor of playing in a saves plus holds league, because it is hard enough to know which relievers are actually good or which relievers are actually bad. How much of Devin Williams' struggles last year were something that will be repeatable moving forward and that will, keep him from being an elite closer, versus how much was like he had a couple of bad months that amounted to like 14 innings total across 2 months. It's really hard to actually know that. And so when you add in having to try to predict which closers will be closers and which will have their manager's confidence and who can afford 3 bad weeks and who can't, saves plus holds takes a lot of that out. It's still hard to know who's actually good in these leagues, but it's easier than everything else that we have to try to do with relievers typically.
I would say that there is a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress that's created from the whole closer carousel in fantasy. And like I write a weekly article, near weekly article about it during the season, just keeping up with all the changes. There are websites dedicated to just tracking closer changes. And a lot of hand wringing goes on there. A lot of discussion about it online will turn to just play in saves plus holds leagues and all your problems are solved. Like dozens of comments expressing that same sentiment. And it is true. It is true that if you play in a saves plus holds leagues, that source of anxiety is basically eliminated because there are so many relievers who can provide either saves or holds in useful quantities. And if one of them, if you pick the wrong one and he falls flat on his face, you just swap him out for another one. There's an endless supply of them if you play in a league of any normal size. And I have to admit, having played in a league like that more in recent years, just one, but it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice not to have to think about that, not to feel like the rug is getting pulled out from under you when a guy you're depending on for a big bulk of your investment in that category just is removed from the role. And are we sure we know who his replacement is? How much fab should we throw? It's nice not having to worry about any of that, but it does kind of reduce relief pitcher to kicker. It becomes the kicker position of fantasy baseball, which is to say just kind of tacked on, kind of a source of randomness every week and not really something you need to strategize around. So in theory, I don't like it. In theory, I want to keep relievers primarily to make their value primarily about meeting the saves category. But in practice, it is nice not to have to worry about that. So, I see both sides of it.
Who are the projected holds leaders for this season? And if I miss anyone, just feel free to jump in and let me know. But I have Robert Suarez with the Braves here. Whoever isn't the closer for the Brewers between Abner Uribe and Trevor Megill, Adrian Morejon and Jeremiah Estrada of the Padres, Brian Abreu of the Astros, though he might just be the closer if Josh Hader's hurt, Matt Brash with the Mariners, Jose Alvarado and Brad Keller with the Phillies, Luke Weaver with the Mets, Tanner Scott with the Dodgers, Phil Maton with the Cubs, Tyler Rogers with the Blue Jays, Garrett Whitlock with the Red Sox, Will Vest and Kyle Finnegan with the Tigers, Lucas Ursig and Matt Strahm with the Royals, and Camilo Doval with the Yankees. Those were the clear standouts for me.
Yeah, that's mostly a list of the best non-closing relievers, at least as far as we can tell right now. There will be guys who come out unexpectedly and emerge as very good sources of holds. I'm looking at like Gabe Spire and Will Vest were top 13 relievers in WAR last season. Neither of them were, I guess Vest was a part-time closer, but Spire didn't get a save. Potentially, like, the nice thing about a saves plus holds league is you look at the Rays situation right now. And that feels like one of the more important closer situations in baseball because it's a pretty good team and some very talented relievers. In a saves-only league, I think the importance of that situation might be overrated because I think they're probably just going to split saves no matter who's in there. Like, we'll talk about it more, but I think this is going to be a situation where there is just no one closer. There might be someone who gets 20 to 25 saves, but I do not think there's going to be anyone in the Rays bullpen who gets 30-plus saves. I don't know when the last time a Rays closer had 30 saves, actually. It's been a long time, I'm pretty sure. Like 2018 or something. So, in a saves plus holds league, well, now you just go draft Griffin Jacks. He's going to be awesome. Regardless, if he doesn't get 20 saves, okay, you don't really care in that format.
Draft Garrett Clevenger because he's probably going to be much cheaper even.
Yeah. So that's the advantage of the saves plus holds format is more things matter besides just the one category. And ultimately, it would be an overstatement to say that only one category matters for relief pitchers in fantasy, but it's not that much of an overstatement. Like, the best pitchers tend to be the best closers in fantasy, but that's mostly because the best pitchers tend to be their closers. And yeah, I don't know. I like getting the headache of trying to predict which teams will have which closers. I think that's a bonus, even if it does, like Scott said, devalues those relief pitchers in a pretty big way.
I am going back through Tampa Bay Rays seasons to see when I could find 30 saves. It was Alex Colomé in 2017 had 47 saves.
Okay, it was 2017.
Yeah.
To be fair, Fairbanks was pretty clearly their closer the past 3 years and was just injured a lot. Mm-hmm. So he got to 27 last year, his healthiest season. Mm-hmm. It might have been him if not for all the injuries.
Yes, I think he would have gotten there. They clearly, despite the kind of fantasy community being ready to run him out of town last year especially, he was clearly the closer and was very good in the role.
Yeah. Before we hit our first break, we have a mailbag coming later this week. So email your questions into fantasybaseball@cbsi.com. That's the letter I, or drop a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Leave your question in the review. I did see a few people leave questions in their review, but they also gave us like a 2 or 3-star rating. So I don't know if that was just like you misclicked something, but I'm like, if you want your question answered, you got to give us a 5-star.
You win more flies with honey. Isn't that the expression?
I have no idea. And
Chris,
I think
you're
Chris
muted.
is trying to tell us something, but he's muted.
Yeah.
No, it was just a dumb, I think you should leave reference. The moment has left us.
All right. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. 40K by opening day. Let's get it done. Let's take our first break. We'll be back right after this.
This is why we do this every March.
Major slam! It is a basketball party. It's March. Expect the unexpected.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball. Today it's our relief pitcher preview, and let's talk strategy. We'll go through the different formats here. We'll start with the 5x5 Roto, and I looked at both 12-team and 15-team leagues last year, two different leagues from each depth last season, and you typically needed about 80 saves to win the category. So in Roto, you have the 9 pitcher spots. You basically need either 2 lockdown closers that give you 35-plus saves, or 3 closer options that average out to 25 saves per spot. Scott, do you typically go with 2 or 3 relievers in your lineup? And does it change depending on the depth of the league?
Oh, yeah, it definitely changes depending on the depth of the league. Because if we're talking about strictly saves, leagues that strictly score saves, there is a finite number of relievers at any one time who can contribute to that category, and it doesn't change if the league gets deeper. You know, that's not the case for any of the other 5x5 categories. There are, you know, every player can contribute home runs, for instance, in the entire player pool, but that saves isn't like that. At any point in time, there are only 30 in theory, sometimes a handful more because of committee situations going on, that are going to contribute saves. So the deeper the league, obviously that number of relievers is spread among more teams. You can't get as many, and without paying a premium for it, that probably isn't worth it. So I would say in the standard 12-team league that we normally cater to, my goal going into a Roto draft is to get 3 save sources. Only one of them has to be like super bankable, and it doesn't have to be the most high-end guy. I'm never going to be rarely going to be the guy who drafts the first closer or even the second or third or fourth in a league. But I want one that I feel like is really secure in the role And then I try to grab 2 others who I think are in the lead for the role and hope that that's enough to carry me. Obviously, it doesn't always work out with those cheaper guys, especially. Sometimes it doesn't work out with the more expensive guy. And, but at least in a 12-team context, the waiver wire throughout the course of the year is going to keep producing save sources. And so I can fill in those gaps as needed. I say I aim for 3 going into the draft. I don't always end up getting 3. I'd say more often I end up getting 2 probably than 3. But again, I don't sweat that so much. I mean, sometimes I've come out with 1 or even 0 save sources in a 12-team league, and it still works out okay because the waiver wire is producing enough alternatives over the course of the year. But I'd like to start out with 3 because I have a really good shot of just winning the category and not necessarily needing a big investment to do that. That's in a 12-team league. Now, in a 15-team league, it's going to be really hard to get 3. And to get any one closer that feels really secure in the role, you're probably going to have to invest one of your top 10 picks in it, which is frustrating, but it's just the way it is. Again, more teams dividing the same number of saves, they go for more of a premium. So I'm more aiming for 2 in a 15-team context. Again, I want 1 who seems really secure in the role. And then you get anything deeper than that, like AL, NL. You're lucky to get even 2 that are the front runners for saves.
Guy for sure in an AL or NL.
I'll still aim for 2, but only 1 lockdown, and likely that's all I'm going to get.
It's interesting, Scott. One of the things you said there was about elite closers and the high-end names not necessarily living up to expectations. Quickly, just looking at the top 8 relievers drafted in ADP last year, Emmanuel Clase, that's kind of a weird story there, but Devin Williams, Josh Hader, Edwin Diaz, Mason Miller, Ryan Helsley, Raisel Iglesias, Felix Bautista.
It was a really bad year for high-end closers last year.
It was not great. It was not a great season. So it does not always work out very well, although typically these are the guys that are locked in and we're expecting great ratios from. We'll get to some of those names later on. Chris, what is your specific closer strategy in a Roto League?
Similar to Scott's, I think. I'm trying to get I think I'm more willing to pay for the one high-end guy than Scott is, just because I know I'm generally not as active on the waiver wire as Scott is. And so I want to have the one guy at least that I can count on. And then, get another guy in the 20 to 25 range and hope that works out. And then, I'll take one more flyer. But I think ideally in a 12-team league, you're coming out with 3. You start to do the math. It gets pretty fuzzy. But it's also probably true that there are more than 30 draftable relievers, at least within this context, because the Rays have at least 2. Potentially, I think you can make a case for 3. There are going to be several teams that have multiple guys worth drafting, especially right now. As we get closer to opening day, ideally, some of those will become a little more obvious, but it's
Brewers, you probably have to draft 2 guys.
Yeah,
Cardinals,
both of those guys.
You could consider drafting 2 guys.
There's probably at least 5 to 10 bullpens where there are multiple options right now.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. Like, would you include the Braves in that group?
I think you probably should draft Robert Suarez. Yes, not because.
Yeah, I mean he's inside the top 280 ADP, so he's being
not because I think it's going to be a committee.
Right.
I almost said platoon, but because Raisel Iglesias lost his job last year, and Robert Suarez is an elite closer. So there is a chance that just ends up working out, that Robert Suarez is the closer by April 10th, in which case he's going to be a hugely valuable contributor to a lot of fantasy teams.
I guess just to summarize the approach to drafting closers, my preferred approach in a Roto League, because I know I threw a lot of numbers at people, just 30, take the number 30, divide it by the number of teams in your league, and round up. That's the number of save sources you should try to draft. Ideally, you come out of the draft with a chance of winning the category without even having to lift a finger on the waiver wire, and just understand that it's probably not going to work out. But If you can do that, you're in really good shape. If you don't, there's still a good chance you'll be able to piece it together over the course of the year.
For me in Roto, I typically try to get one of the top 7 this year, which does end with Chapman and then David Bednar. I usually jump back into that second closer range, whether it's Jeff Hoffman, Emilio Pagan, Daniel Palencia, Kenley Jansen, guys like that. And then I'll take my dart throw on a third option later on, someone like Riley O'Brien or Kirby Yates or D-backs bullpen or any kind of ambiguous bullpen right now. Let's talk head-to-head categories leagues with the standard 5x5 categories. Typically, the lineup in that format is 2 starting pitchers, 2 relief pitchers, and then 4 pitcher spots. This definitely depends on what your specific league weekly innings minimum is. I believe the standard on Yahoo is 20 innings per week, so that could influence how many relievers you want to have in your lineup on a given day. But Chris, how do you usually like to attack this? Do you have a certain number of set closers? Do you like to leave some relievers in there for ratios? How do you attack head-to-head categories?
I don't think you should go into your draft expecting to draft multiple non-closing relievers. That's, obviously, if Garrett Clevenger is a non-closing reliever, he might get 10 saves, so it's fine to draft him, especially in a 15-team context. But non-closing relievers can be very valuable. And there will always be a handful of non-closing relievers who rank very, very highly in the end-of-season rankings among relievers. Adrian Morejon would be probably the best example from last season. What was the Tigers guy who got like 9 wins and 10 saves 2 years ago?
Tyler Holton?
Tyler Holton. Yeah, like there will always be those situations.
It's mainly because of wins, though.
Yeah,
right?
It's mainly because of wins. And predicting that is a fool's errand.
Yeah. Morejon had 13 wins.
Yeah. As
75
a full-time
relief appearances and 13 wins. That's amazing. That's
so
not
like
gonna
those,
happen again.
and he was the number 6 reliever, I think, last year, 7. That's not going to happen again. Like it'll happen for someone. Someone will have 9
probably
or
not
10
13.
wins. But some non-closer will end up in the top 12.
Yeah.
It's not worth trying to figure out who it's going to be ahead of time. And the impacts that you get even from elite non-closing relievers, yes, they'll have elite ratios, but the denominator is so small, right? You're only getting 60 innings out of most of them that it is hard to make a big impact on your final numbers that way. But in a league where 150 innings is the new 180 innings, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think we have seen a commensurate drop in reliever workloads. I don't think like there were a bunch of 80-inning relievers, and now all those guys are 60-inning relievers. There were a handful of 80-inning relievers in the past. I think Eric Gagne got there a couple of times, but I don't think we've seen the same dilution of the reliever pool that we have for starting pitchers. So those guys can be a little more valuable to your bottom line ERA and WHIP numbers. I just don't think they should be part of your plan on draft day. It is useful to know who the good non-closing relievers are to add mid-season, because there will be times when you just don't like the waiver wire options at starting pitcher and you don't want to screw your ratios up. Yeah, just go out and add, last year it would have been Cade Smith. But I think going into the season with that as your plan is probably a little too cute.
But Chris, in a head-to-head categories league where you're just playing week by week, that denominator is much smaller as well. So that's why I wonder if keeping elite ratio or elite strikeout relievers in your lineup just throughout the course of the week can help decide a win or loss, basically.
I think that's especially true in the daily lineup leagues, because that's how you make up for lack of volume from relievers. You just cycle every reliever into your starting lineup for all your starters who aren't starting that day. But in a traditional, certainly head-to-head points, but even in Roto, I don't think non-closer relievers should be a big part of your plan.
Scott, what is your typical strategy in a head-to-head categories league, and how does it change in a saves plus holds league?
I mean, saves plus holds is easy. I might just wait until my last 3 picks and take relievers who I think are going to be a prominent part of their team's bullpen. Likely not even the closer, but That whole list you gave, and there's many, many beyond that. Dylan Lee comes to mind. Alex Vesia, like it's an endless list, and like we talked about earlier, a lot of the best options we don't even know about yet. So it gets longer as the season plays out. So that's easy to talk about. Saves plus holds. Head-to-head categories when it's just saves is a little trickier, and I think my approach would be similar to the one I laid out for Roto if it's weekly lineup locks. What makes it tricky is the daily lineup locks, where you can use relievers to fill in the gaps in between starts because of how often you're able to change your lineup. It's rather than just leaving a starting pitcher in there who's not going to give you anything that specific day, you can insert a reliever who's going to help in ratios. And again, I think there's a long list of relievers that could serve that purpose for you well, many more than can be drafted. So I don't think it's something you have to stress about on draft day. I don't know that it would change my approach much at all on draft day. Actually, it would be more as my my sort of lottery ticket picks in the draft at other positions, as some of them flamed out. I discard them on the waiver wire and bring in some reliever that I could use to supplement my pitching staff in the middle of the week. So I would mainly aim for closers still on draft day in a daily head-to-head categories league. Aim to get 3, just like in a Roto league. Maybe make it a little bit more of a priority because you don't have the full extent of the season to catch up if you fall behind. You gotta start banking wins now. But I think the management in season changes quite a bit so that, again, you can plug in those relievers in between your starting pitchers.
Yeah, I think in head-to-head categories, daily leagues, I like to get 2 locked-in closers, a 3rd closer spec, and then probably just a 4th reliever that I'm leaving in there most times just to help out with ratios and strikeouts. Because, again, you're cycling all the other pitcher spots through with starting pitchers anyway that you could just afford to leave 4 relievers in your lineup on a daily basis. So that's typically how I like to go about it. Next up, we have head-to-head points leagues. The CBS standard is 5 starting pitchers and 2 relief pitchers. Yes, you can start closers, but you can also start SPARPs, SPs as relief pitchers, which is a little cheat code here for fantasy. The top closers typically score less than top players at other positions in a head-to-head points league. Last year, we only had 4 relievers with 400-plus fantasy points. In 2023 and 2024, we had 6 relievers with 400-plus fantasy points. So, Chris, how do you handle head-to-head points leagues? Do you like to get 2 closers? Is it 1 closer, 1 SPARP? Is it 2 SPARPs? What do you think?
Head-to-head points leagues are probably the ones where, when it comes to relief pitchers, I'm most likely to just ignore ADP and take a couple of SPARP flyers, that guys who I don't think are actually all that good, but who I'm at least willing to give the opportunity.
Entire SPARP pool this year?
Pretty much the entire SPARP pool, yes. Ryan Nelson, I think, is the main exception, but I'm willing to draft Reed Detmers or Anthony Kay or Braxton Ashcraft or Nick Martinez in a head-to-head points league with one of my last picks, because if they falter, there will be some useful closer or some useful SPARP who emerges. You know, maybe it's Sean Newcomb is surprisingly useful as he returns to the rotation for the White Sox. And I think a big part of that is just what we always talk about with head-to-head points leagues. Generally speaking, you want to avoid bad pitchers in Roto, because one bad start from Sean Newcomb can ruin your ratios for most of the season.
Ratios.
Exactly.
You might even say.
In a head-to-head points league,
what? Your ratios.
If Sean Newcomb's a 2-star pitcher and he has 2 bad starts, okay, that was bad for you that 1 week. You just drop him. So I'm much more willing to, 1, wait until the end of my draft. I think it's almost a guarantee that you should not take a closer early in a head-to-head points league. And then 2, I'm much more likely to just throw kind of blind darts at SPARPs just in case something happens and they're useful, because there's a little more upside. And just to highlight that, I was trying to do some Excel stuff while I'm talking. Who would have been the top Sparp last year, if you guys can remember off the top of your head?
Well,
I would guess it's somebody who's not a Sparp anymore.
Yeah.
I know Chris Bubich.
Chris Bubich was very, very good. Okay, here's what I'll do.
It was
last year.
It was Quinn Priester in terms of total points scored.
I would get. He probably didn't get to 400, right?
382.
382. The number 12 reliever last season in head-to-head points league was Kenley Jansen. He had 349 points. There were probably at least 40 starting pitchers who had more points last season than the number 12 RP. So it's just the bar for relevance is so low at RP that I'm much more willing to just play that 2-start game with those guys.
Well, how many finished in the top 24, let's say, assuming 12-team league, everybody needs 2 relievers? It's kind of a silly exercise because in a head-to-head points leagues, especially you're changing your lineup a lot.
Yeah.
You're swapping out players on the waiver wire.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm
it's
saying.
not
Is
like
that
you're just drafting 2 relievers and keeping them fixed in those spots all season. But
yeah, what I'm saying is the 18th best reliever in a head-to-head points league, like the 18th best true closer, is so fringy that I think you can find Sparps with 2 starts in most given weeks and fill that in your spot, use that to fill your spot, or just find some bad closer who is getting saves at least and hope he gets a couple of saves that week. So I think in a head-to-head points league, I'm much, much more willing to just use those RP spots to just stream as much as possible.
I've been so vocal about it over the years that when we do some of these head-to-head points drafts with people around the industry, they really test me and how long some of those high-end closers will last. And it's like, it's round 14 and Cade Smith is still there.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's still kind of a waste of a pick. Even though he's going to be one of the better, like what margin does he actually give you there?
I do think like Cade Smith is one that you can see being a 500-point player. It's a high-end outcome, but Emmanuel Clase had, I think, at least one, maybe multiple 500-point seasons as the Guardians closer. And Cade Smith is a better strikeout pitcher, at least. You know, I don't know if I want to go out and say exactly he's a better pitcher, but he might be, or at least he might be as good.
We had 2 relievers with 500-plus fantasy points in 2024.
Ryan Helsley and Emmanuel Clase?
Yeah. But that was the only 2 in the past 3 years that have done. So it's not very rare. So, and as a result, Scott, I see, it's not as common. I think closers should rightfully so fall in head-to-head point drafts, and people need to consider that, especially if you play on CBS, because A, the replacement value is much better because you'll be able to find closers on the waiver wire, and B, half the league is probably just going to be using Sparps anyway. So there's not as much demand at the position. So
right. And I mean, the other wrinkle there is, okay, Cade Smith we think is going to be one of the highest scoring closers, and conversely, Trevor Megill, who's going to maybe be available very late in a head-to-head points league. Well, we have really doubts about his ability to rack up a lot of points because we don't even know for sure that he's the main guy. But there's so much volatility in that, just in how many saves any closer is going to end up with. I mean, Trevor Megill may get 3 saves the first week and never look back. And he may end up outscoring Cade Smith in head-to-head points leagues just by virtue of accumulating more saves. Not that he's necessarily in a better situation for saves, but just it's not the easiest thing to predict. And so that's part of why, even if it's a high-end guy who lasts a long time in a head-to-head points leagues, it's like I really have to just be at a loss for what else to do with the pick to take a high-end reliever, to fill one of my reliever spot with earlier than one of my last 5 picks, let's say.
All right, brace yourself. Here are the Sparps that you can look at in head-to-head points leagues this year. We have Ryan Nelson of the D-backs, Cody Ponce with the Blue Jays, Joey Cantillo with the Guardians, Braxton Ashcraft with the Pirates, Reed Detmers with the Angels, Anthony Kay with the Blue Jays, Foster Griffin with the Nationals, Steven Matz with the Rays, Nick Martinez with the Rays, Jacob Latz, maybe, if he's in the rotation with the Rangers, Jose Urquidy with the Pirates, Taijuan Walker with the Phillies, and then a couple other maybes here. Sean Newcomb, Ian Seymour, Troy Melton, Joey Wentz. Does it sound right? Did I miss anybody? I think
it seems right, and it's pretty underwhelming.
Yeah.
So
there will be some names that emerge, but yeah, like these are the guys to start, basically.
Most of these guys are to-start only types. Like Steven Matz, there's just not enough upside there to start him in a one-start week.
We don't think, unless the Rays work their magic on him.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's upside there with Cody Ponce and with Braxton Ashcraft and Joey
Cantillo, Reed Detmers.
Is it Cantillo?
Yep.
I believe. Yeah, I looked this up the other day. He is not Latino. He's of Italian origin, so I think it would be Cantillo.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I looked that up on the BREF page to make sure. So, I think those are pretty much. I think Jacob Latz is like an interesting pitcher, but again, he has to be in the rotation to matter.
Yeah, so. A lot of competition there.
Yeah, he's a deep league name to look at. On Yahoo, I will mention if you play in a points league on Yahoo, Chase Burns, Quinn Priester, Mike Burrows, Sean Manaea all have relief pitcher eligibility. They do not on CBS. And I know listeners usually ask for the reverse of SPARPs as well, RPASPs. So those are SP eligible players who will mostly be relievers. I think it's like a daily head-to-head points league thing where people are just trying to like sneak by points and stuff. But on CBS, it's a gross list, but you want them. Jack Dreyer of the Dodgers, Tyler Holton of the Tigers, Ryan Watson with the Red Sox, no clue. Eric Lauer with the Blue Jays, Tyler Alexander with the Rangers, Carmen Majinski with the Pirates. On Yahoo, Tyler Holton, Eric Lauer, Jack Dreyer, Mike Vassell, Brant Herder, AJ Bluebaugh, Drew Pomeranz, Keegan Aiken, Colin Ray, Cole Sands, Huascar Brazovan, and Jose Buto. So there you go. Let's take our final break. When we return, we will try to predict each team's saves leader. We'll do that right after this.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today. It's our relief pitcher preview for 2026. And let's try and predict each team's saves leader, not who will start with the job, who will lead the team. And just give me a name because we'll save some of the longer analysis for when we talk about ADP. So we'll start in the National League.
Okay. All right. We got to do that too.
We do. We're trying to keep it under 2 hours today. Here we go. The Dodgers, it's Edwin Diaz. The Padres, it's Mason Miller. The Giants.
I think it's likeliest to be Ryan Walker.
Not on the team, ?
Ryan Walker is openly campaigning for it. He says he wants that role. So we'll see. He's got to pitch last year, or maybe not
to avoid losing it.
I read that exact thing earlier today. I also read that Buster Posey and Tony Vitello are open to a committee. So who knows? For the D-backs, Kevin Ginkel, Paul Sewald.
That is one of the real ugly ones.
Yeah, one of the hurt relievers who returns midseason. I don't know.
If you're asking me to name a name, I'm going to say Kevin Ginkel.
Yep. That's a fun name to say.
It is. But that is one of the lowest conviction picks I'm going to make in this entire exercise because Kevin Ginkel was awful last year. They were all awful last year. And so it's just a matter of who's going to step up and will anyone step up or will it just be a mishmash of Torey Lovello just swapping out one awful option for another all season long? I could definitely see it playing out that way.
That's probably the more likely outcome.
It might not matter, but I'll just ask anyway. The Rockies.
They're even below the Diamondbacks.
Well, and the problem there is, like, even if Victor Vodnik is the closer for the whole season, I just don't think he's good.
I don't think he's good either, yeah.
Like Seth Halverson looked like he might be securing that role before getting hurt, and then he got hurt, and so Vodnik stepped in.
And I think Vodnik had like 7 saves in September, something crazy like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
They're not very good, the relievers themselves, and the team isn't very good. Yeah. So this feels like it's going to go, well, I mean, about like it's gone for the Rockies the past few years.
Yeah, a couple of guys fighting over 32 saves just isn't very interesting.
Is it as many as 32? I mean, the White Sox have kind of been in the same situation in recent years where it's just like, why bother? You're just.
How many did they have total? 29 last year.
Yeah.
On
I mean, of their 50 wins, they might wind up with 30 saves total. Who knows? For the Phillies, it's Jhoan Duran. For the Mets, it's Devin Williams, hopefully all season. For the Braves, I mean, look, it's Raisel Iglesias to start, but it is a thin margin for error there with Robert Suarez.
Yeah, that's fair, but I want to remind people of Raisel Iglesias' track record. Early last season was definitely the exception, and he righted the ship. He was. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but
save them for ADP, Scott. We don't got to talk about him now.
Okay, that's fine.
I
think Raisel Iglesias is secure because I think he's good, and I don't think he'll lose the job. But you're right; it is a thinner margin for error than he's ever had.
For the Marlins, all of last year, I told you they will never have a closer ever again, and then they signed Pete Fairbanks, who could be traded. So
it's definitely Pete Fairbanks gets 60% of the saves when he's on the team.
I hope it's more than that.
It's 60% of probably the first half of the season.
Yeah, no, it's less great than I think it seems, because I don't think they're just going to go treat him like the Guardians have treated Emmanuel Clase and Cade Smith over the past 4 years, where they're just, every time we have a save opportunity, that is the only guy who will get that opportunity. I just don't think that's how the Marlins are going to operate.
Well,
so I think Fairbanks is going to get the majority of the saves, but it's not going to be do not be surprised if Calvin Fauché has a save in the first week of the season. It might not mean anything as long as you go into it with the understanding that Pete Fairbanks is probably not going to, it's going to be very similar to how it was in Tampa.
Well, in Tampa, Fairbanks was the closer when he was healthy.
Yeah, what he probably got, I would say, close to 75% of the saves last year. I don't know. Okay, 27 out of 35.
What was the line you kept saying about the Marlins bullpen last year, Frank? You had a line you said every time.
They do not have a closer, and they never will ever again.
And then they signed Pete Fairbanks this offseason, who had been a true closer the past 3 years. And they signed him to closer money.
Yep.
So I don't know. They clearly didn't have that type of reliever in their bullpen last year, which may have been why Clayton McCulloch was not willing to commit to any one reliever in the role. They have him now. I think the jury's out. I'm not drafting Fairbanks feeling secure about it, but I feel better about drafting Fairbanks than Ryan Walker, for instance.
Sure,
because
I agree with that.
Yeah. Here's a fun one: the Nationals.
It's like it's like Rockies and Diamondbacks.
We can say some names: Clayton Beeter and Cole Henry and maybe Jackson Rutledge, but they're bad. They're bad pitchers and they're a terrible team. So,
and we're only 2 divisions in, right? And we already have 3 teams like that.
Yeah.
This is the bottom end of the closer pool is really ugly.
For the Cubs, it should be Daniel Palencia. They have some other talented relievers in their bullpen.
But they already said if the season started now, Daniel Palencia would get the first save. That's not
whether or not he can hold the job.
Yeah. He was really good last year, but the command has been really, really bad before last season. So I think there's a lot of risk with Daniel Palencia.
For the Reds, I mean, I think it's a similar discussion as Palencia. I mean, Emilio Pagan was just the guy, and they brought him back, so he'll be the guy that's to start. But he's a fly ball pitcher in Cincinnati, so can he hold on to the job? That's the question. The Brewers, flip a coin, guys. Who do you have?
Managers tend to not like it when players lose their jobs because of injury. And if Abner Uribe opens the season as a closer, that's basically what happened to Trevor Megill, right? Like, he was the unquestioned closer, and then last August, I think,
All-star.
late last August, yeah, he was one of the best closers in baseball. And then late last August, he suffers a flexor strain in his elbow, I believe.
Yep.
Goes on the IL. Abner Uribe is a very, very good pitcher in his own right and is a closer caliber pitcher. So if they did go with Abner Uribe, that would be reasonable. I tend to think Megill will just get the first shot because of some kind of incumbency advantage, but that's a total guess.
I haven't seen a beat writer for the Brewers leaning Uribe. They all lean Megill, but they all kind of acknowledge that the Brewers haven't addressed this.
Mhm.
So I've been leaning Megill strongly. We did just get some news today on this front. It was that Trevor Megill had a PRP injection in the offseason.
Mhm.
And also Pat Murphy seems open to playing matchups, which I think a lot more managers will say that than will actually follow through on it. So I don't want to look too deep into that either, but it's not what we want to hear. We want clarity, obviously. And so the main thing that gives me pause even more than that is Megill did return for 1 appearance in the regular season and for 5 in the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
And in none of those was he used as the closer. In fact, he was an opener for one of the postseason games. So I don't know what that means. Were they just easing him in? Opener in a playoff game isn't really an easing him in kind of role. So I don't know. I'm leaning Megill because nobody seems to be leaning Uribe, but I don't feel confident about it.
I think the biggest reason to lean Uribe would just be he didn't get hurt last year and Trevor Megill did. I think there's just probably more injury risk with Trevor Megill. But let's not forget that Abner Uribe a couple years ago was the year Devin Williams got hurt in 2024. Abner Uribe opened the season as the closer and was just a complete disaster and spent almost the entire season at AAA as a result. So as good as he has been at his best, we have seen some real downside for Abner Uribe too. So I lean Uribe, but in my top 300, I have them back to back.
And it could be a situation where it's 20 saves for one and 18 for the other. And it's just they go back and forth all season and they just have really good fluid bullpen.
It could be. I think a lot more often what we see along those lines, because people talk about how there are fewer like true save accumulating closers across the league, but I don't see a lot of true committees either, where they're legitimately just going back and forth based on matchups. You see it sometimes, but more when the saves are distributed among a few relievers like that. It's because one of the relievers turns rotten for a while, so the manager has to move away from him, or it's an injury situation, like suppressed Fairbanks save totals in Tampa the past few years, or it's a guy gets traded, and so then obviously somebody steps in to take his saves total, and so you look at the end of the season and there's this even distribution of saves between a couple of relievers. So that's why I don't see it happening the way you lay out, Frank, with Megill getting 18 and Uribe getting 20 or whatever, unless Megill gets hurt, and then so Uribe steps in and takes over as the true closer.
And that is actually the way that I'm leaning here. I just don't know if Trevor Megill can stay healthy, and he got hurt last year and he throws really hard. And I think Abner Uribe is really good. So I'm kind of planting a flag there. I think it'll be Uribe eventually in the Brewers bullpen. For the Pirates, what do you think?
Santana seems secure to start out, and he's been good the last couple years. So I don't think he is indestructible by any means. And there are some other interesting arms like Justin Lawrence out of Colorado. He's got a really good slider. Maybe that turns into something, but there isn't an heir apparent. So I think Santana will have a pretty long leash.
Agreed.
And then the Cardinals.
Things seem to be trending Riley O'Brien's way at the end of last season. But after the trade deadline, when Ryan Helsley was moved to the Mets, it was pretty even between Riley O'Brien, the right-hander, Jojo Romero, the left-hander. O'Brien is dealing with an injury this spring. Doesn't sound like it's going to cost him at the start of the season, but you never know. So I think this is one of the I think this might end up being a true committee, just because that's the way Oliver Marmol played it down the last couple months. And because the guy who I thought might have the advantage, O'Brien, is coming in at a disadvantage with the injury, it's possible even more arms work their way into this mix. So I have them back to back in my rankings, O'Brien and Romero, and not particularly high, not really even in the mixed league discussion. Though if either one emerges as the guy, he could be decent.
Yeah, Eileen O'Brien. I thought Jojo Romero would have been traded this offseason, but it hasn't happened yet. So he could also be in the mix there. We go into the American League, and the Mariners have Andres Muñoz. The Astros, Josh Hader should be the guy, but he's dealing with this biceps injury. So, I mean, it's really hard for us to say if, he misses a large majority of the season. Obviously, Brian Abreu is good enough. So, but it should be Hader whenever he's healthy. For the Rangers, this one is kind of open-ended right now.
Yeah, though Skip Schumacher has said he actually wants a dedicated closer. So I think most managers secretly or not so secretly do. I'll let Chris jump in, though, because he hasn't talked in a while.
No, the one thing I was going to say is just the thing that makes the Rangers bullpen especially tough is I think Chris Martin's pretty clearly the best pitcher in the bullpen. He's got like a 7-year stretch of being really good. He also has not thrown more than 44 1/3 innings in the last 2 seasons and has never reached 60 innings in a major league season. And I don't know how much this matters because it's a new manager, but the Rangers just were not really willing to give him the closer role last season, even though it was open. He only had 2 saves despite a pretty good season. So
Schumacher hasn't been mentioning him.
Yeah, I think. I wonder if it's just like, can you be a closer if your team doesn't trust you to pitch multiple days in a row?
That might be it.
I think it might just be as simple as that. So I would give the edge here to Robert Garcia, but I think the key name to watch is Alexis Diaz, who is a former All-Star closer, was on 3 different teams, was bad for all of them last season. I want to say he dealt with a hamstring injury as well. If he can rediscover some of that all-star form this spring, I think Alexis Diaz actually has a pretty good chance of jumping the line just because Robert Garcia is a lefty, and a lot of managers are hesitant to go with lefties, although Skip Schumacher did have Tanner Scott as his closer for a while in Miami.
But the Rangers don't really have great lefty options, too. If you look at their bullpen, I mean, it's really just Robert Garcia.
The Rangers have said that they see something they can do mechanically with Alexis Diaz that they think will be a fix. Like all the enthusiasm in Rangers camp seems to be for Diaz. So I lean Diaz, but I'm not sure he's good. And so Robert Garcia seems like an easy fallback.
I will say, if it was going to work for Alexis Diaz, it's much more likely in Texas than Cincinnati because he's an extreme fly ball pitcher, and Cincinnati's one of the best home run ballparks in baseball, and Texas is one of the worst. So maybe they can get something out of Alexis Diaz.
This next team, I have no clue. The Athletics.
Ugly.
It's another one. It's kind of like the Rockies, where I think they're a better team than the Rockies, but most of the pitchers in their bullpen are not very impressive, and it's a really bad ballpark. So I have no read on this one, honestly.
Justin Sterner's the one I've seen get drafted most often, so I will just default to that because other people who have clearly thought more about it have decided he's the front runner, but I doubt it's with much assurance or enthusiasm, and I prefer to just avoid the situation entirely.
When we did our A's team preview this offseason, Elvis Alvarado was a name that was thrown out there, so I'll just mention it in the A's bullpen. He throws really hard, but he has no idea where it's going. Next up, we have the Angels.
So Kirby Yates is the most fun. I think the storyline there is that he's being reunited with Mike Maddox, who was his pitching coach in Texas the last time Kirby Yates had a great season. And he was legitimately a great closer that season. And so hopefully Maddox can get him back on track. But, they have a couple of other Ben Joyce obviously used to be floated as a closer in waiting. Robert
I don't think he's not going to be
Stevenson.
ready for the start of the season. It doesn't sound like Ben Joyce. And Stevenson may not be either. He's coming back from another elbow issue.
Okay, we saw Stevenson a little at the end of last year, but he's been hurt a lot the past couple of years. So I think Yates is the guy to target here. And I'm more confident in that than the Athletics or the Nationals or the Diamondbacks or the Rockies, but I'm still not very confident in it. That's clearly a number 3 reliever option, Kirby Yates.
Agreed.
I think we can move pretty quickly through the AL East. For the Yankees, David Bednar. For the Red Sox, Aroldis Chapman. For the Blue Jays, Jeff Hoffman, hopefully. Orioles, Ryan Helsley, hopefully. And then we get to the Rays, which it seems like Griffin Jax should lead the team in saves. How many saves is it going to be? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a real risk of Griffin Jax ending up overdrafted as a result of this Edwin Uceda injury, because Uceda, one, it's no structural damage. They're still talking about like he might be ready for opening day. I don't think that's likely, but they're open to it. And two, I think even if Uceda's completely out of the picture, it'll just be other guys. When we had Ryan Bass on the show to talk about the Rays for the team preview series, he said he specifically cited that 2021 team that had an MLB record, 14 different guys get a save. I don't think it's likely that happens again, but I do not think Griffin Jax is just going to be handed this closer job to run with. I think it's going to be a frustrating committee. And look, if you push Griffin Jax up to like the 20th closer off the board in a Roto league, I think that's fine. Because I think he'll be very good, and he got to like 75 innings, which is a pretty healthy number for a reliever. So like, there's, I think, a lot to like about Griffin Jax for sure. It's just, I think people are looking at the Edwin Uceda injury and saying there were 2 guys in the Rays bullpen and one of them's hurt now, and I just don't think that's how.
But how early is Jax going?
Over the last week, it's around 190. I think I was looking earlier.
Where among relievers though?
But there's a min pick of 125 in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he should be drafted more along the lines of the Dennis Santanas and the Pete Fairbankses. If he's getting elevated beyond that, then I agree.
No, he's behind those guys. He's around 190.
Okay, well that
Santana's
seems,
160. Yeah, no, I agree. It hasn't happened yet.
That seems fine. Like it could. Tampa Bay obviously has a lot of comfort going with a committee, like as much comfort as any organization, and Kevin Cash has been there for a lot of it. So I could definitely see it playing out. I think Cardinals and Rays are the 2 teams with the most likely to be a true committee, but it doesn't have to play out that way either. And a lot of times what we see happen with these questionable closer situations is a manager will go in saying it's going to be a committee, refusing to commit to anyone, and then just as the season's playing out, it becomes somebody. And I could see it becoming any one of these guys, whether it's Jax, Edwin Uceda, let's say he comes back healthy, even Garrett Clevenger, even though he's the lefty, like the numbers are good enough that if things are going wrong with Jackson and Uceda, I could see him emerging as the one. So if the price is reasonable, if it remains 200 to 300 for any one of those guys in a deep Roto league, I'd take any one and just see how it evolves. But if Jax gets pushed up, like Jax is clearly the front runner right now. If he gets pushed up into the top 150, then obviously that's an avoid.
Yeah, that hasn't happened yet, to be clear. I'm just kind of speculating that there just seems to be a lot. Like, I think the general consensus among fantasy analysts and players is Griffin Jax is better than Edwin Uceda anyway.
I'm not confident in that.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but it seems like there's more interest in Griffin Jax. So now that Uceda is out of the way, I think Griffin Jax's price could start to get a little out of hand.
Next up, we have the Royals, and Carlos Estevez led baseball in saves last year. Look, Royals fans might laugh at me for this. I would take the field.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have a guy with iffy skill sets and you have a whole bullpen of other guys to take, I don't think that's an unreasonable approach to take when projecting. But I also do think Estevez has no risk of losing the job because he just got outperformed. Hold on. And what I mean by that is if he pitches poorly, then he's going to lose the job. If he just holds serve, I think it's his job the whole season.
Sure.
And I think holding serve is probably like a 3.50 ERA. So there is room for him to regress from last year and still hang on to that job. But the peripherals suggest even a 3.50 ERA may be asking too much from Carlos Estevez, whose strikeout rate was a career low. His walk rate was higher than it was in 2024. He's an extreme fly ball pitcher. It is very easy to see how things go very wrong for Carlos Estevez.
There's no heir apparent, is what you're saying. Like last year there was in Lucas Erceg, but Erceg, 264 ERA, but his 7 per 9,
strikeout rate collapsed.
7K per 9 was.
That was their entire bullpen. I almost wonder if it was like a team philosophy thing for them. It was weird.
I do think if they want to go with Matt Strahm, I think he's probably the best pitcher in that bullpen.
Oh, that's true. I forgot he joined the Royals.
It was very, if I'm remembering correctly, it was very much like, oh God, I'm blanking on the name now. Oh, when Ryan Presley got traded from the Astros at the beginning of last season, it was very much you kind of told me I was going to be a closer, and then you signed Josh Hader. I kind of want out. It seems like Matt Strahm wanted a more prominent role in the Phillies bullpen, and that wasn't going to happen. So it's entirely possible. I think Matt Strahm is the best pitcher in this bullpen. He's been very good for a while now out of the Phillies bullpen. Yeah. So that's the name to watch in Philadelphia, I think, with
Kansas City.
Excuse me, is Matt Strahm.
For the Tigers, do we just go with the vet?
Yeah, this is not the most robust form of analysis, but I have a hard time seeing Kenley Jansen, who is 20 saves away from 500 or something, very close to a really significant milestone. I have a hard time believing he was signed with a team to not be their closer. I think if he signed anywhere, it was to be as a closer.
He's 24 away from 500.
There you go, 24 away from 500.
AJ Hinch has not declared him the has consciously not declared him the closer, which I think that's just AJ Hinch being annoying and sticking to his values. But I agree with Chris. I don't think Jansen would have gone there if he didn't have some assurances he'd be the guy.
He was on a podcast last month, I think it was, AJ Hinch, and he said the first save will probably go to the guy that's 500. That's on 500.
The active leader in saves among all pitchers and top 5 ever, who is still.
But he didn't actually say
it's funny.
But he is still good. It's not like Kenley Jansen stinks now. He had a 2.59 ERA last year. Okay, he's not quite that good, but Kenley Jansen has never had an ERA over 4. That's pretty bonkers.
It's funny that he worded it that way. The first save will go to, because it's been 2 straight years now where the guy we thought was going to close for the Tigers, opening day arrives and it's somebody that wasn't even on our radar coming out to get the save.
Yep. For the Guardians, it should be Cade Smith, and he should be amazing at it. For the White Sox, they have
number 1 RP upside. Yeah.
For the White Sox, they named Sir Anthony Dominguez their closer. But
thank you, White Sox.
Can he hold on to it? I guess
he's probably good enough.
Yeah. And then the Twins, feels like they're just a bunch of names, and they might be really bad.
They're another one of those bullpens. Are we up to 6 now, where it's just I have no interest at all?
That sounds
well.
Right.
And the biggest problem for the Twins, there was a piece in the Athletic today about this, or maybe yesterday. All of their best relievers are lefties, basically. They're actually struggling with, can we really get away with carrying 4 lefties in an 8-man bullpen? But if you actually look at it, those are probably the best guys in the bullpen, so they probably should, which could potentially open up Taylor Rogers to be the closer. Yeah. He's a very good reliever who hasn't really ever...
good reliever. He used to be very good.
I think...
and it's a homecoming for him, too. He was the closer in Minnesota years ago.
So I think Taylor Rogers is probably the most likely.
Yeah. I will throw the name Justin Topa out there just because when we did our Twins preview this offseason, that was the name that was given to me. But that was also before Taylor Rogers signed. So do with that what you will. Let's get into relief pitcher ADP using Fantasy Pros average draft position, which is an aggregate of 6 different sources: CBS, Yahoo, ESPN, NFBC, RT Sports, Fantrax, as always, subject to change. And we will start off with 2 names in the 4th round of 12-team leagues: Mason Miller and Edwin Diaz. Now, if you play in draft and hold leagues on the NFBC or a deeper format, you're probably going to see these guys go earlier. Like they could be drafted in the 20s. So just keep that in mind. If you play in a home league, they might go later than this. But right now, it's typically on average in the 4th round for those two. Both are elite, ridiculous pitchers. I think Miller is the better talent at this point among qualified relievers. He ranked first in K per 9, K percentage, K minus walk rate, and swinging strike rate. Averaged 101 miles per hour on his fastball, and he held the velocity all year. I think his durability is always just something that's kind of in the back of your mind, though, with Mason Miller. And then Edwin Diaz signed a 3-year deal with the Dodgers offseason and bounced back from his inconsistent 2024. All the underlying numbers still love him. The velocity is slowly trending down, but still averaged 97 miles per hour, and he held the velocity all year. So, Scott, who do you prefer between the two here, Mason Miller and Edwin Diaz? Do you ever draft either one?
I never draft either one.
Okay.
Though I suppose there is a scenario where I could if they fell in the right league. But no, it's Mason Miller. There was never a doubt in my mind, even as some were entertaining the possibility of him moving to the rotation this offseason. Now that that's been made clear, that nonsense is off the table. Mason Miller is the best reliever in baseball, and he's on a team that should provide him with a lot of save chances. His 22 appearances with the Padres last year, obviously small sample, all of that, but just to put in perspective how good Miller is. 22 appearances with the Padres last year, 0.77 ERA, 0.73 whip, 17.4 K per 9.
Yeah. He's a monster.
His K minus walk rate was 42%. If just his K rate was 42%, that would be amazing. But that was his K minus walk rate during that time.
And so I will point out with Edwin Diaz that he has had his ups and downs. It's not quite an even year, odd year thing because he had the year he missed. It's been an every other year thing where he's been shaky, or every other season that he's played because he had the year he missed with the knee injury. And the Dodgers obviously do have closer caliber relievers behind him, including a guy who got like the 5th biggest contract for a reliever ever 1 year ago in Tanner Scott. So I think there is more risk for Edwin Diaz to fall out of his job, at least temporarily, given the team, given the guys behind him, than you might think. I'm not saying that's a reason to not take Edwin Diaz. I think it's definitely a reason to take Mason Miller ahead of Edwin Diaz, though.
Sure. We move into the 5th round of 12-team leagues where we find 3 names. Andres Muñoz with an ADP of 52, Jhoan Duran at 58, Cade Smith at 61. Technically the 6th round, but I think he belongs in this group. Thank you, Dan Wilson, for unleashing Andres Muñoz. Finally used him as the set closer, and he picked up 38 saves, the 3rd most in baseball. Insane stuff, but he does walk more batters than you'd like to see. Also, his fastball velocity dipped a little bit as the season went on. Jhoan Duran traded over to the Phillies midseason, and he was finally used as the set closer as well. He picked up a career-high 32 saves, has a legit 3-pitch mix. He averages over 100 miles per hour on his fastball, and the velocity held all season for him. And then Cade Smith, who took over for Emmanuel Clase with all the betting shenanigans and everything that went on there. He has been amazing, Cade Smith. Over the past 2 years, he leads all relievers in FWAR. He is extremely talented. We just haven't seen him be a full-time closer over an entire season yet. I guess that's the one sliver of doubt there, but he looked good in that role down the stretch. So, Chris, how do you rank these 3, and do you draft any of them? Cade Smith, Jhoan Duran, and Andres Muñoz.
I'm open to drafting any of them. But it's got to be more like a 6th round price, and that doesn't happen very often. So I'm not actually drafting them, but I think all 3 of these guys are rock solid. Cade Smith, I mean, he hasn't done it, so I guess we don't know that he can be an elite closer. I don't really think there's anything all that special about the 9th inning relative to the 8th inning. I don't see any reason to think that the guy who, Frank, like you said, has the best FIP in baseball over the past 2 seasons, working primarily super high leverage innings in the 8th and last year in the 9th. I have no reason to think Cade Smith is suddenly going to collapse. I guess it's a mild unknown, but no, I have no worries about Cade Smith. I think the upside for Cade Smith, given what we've seen over the past couple of seasons, is he's the number 1 closer in baseball. And Emmanuel Clase led the American League in saves 3 straight years. And I believe Cade Smith and Emmanuel Clase combined for 40 saves last season. So the Guardians closer has had 40-plus saves 4 straight years now. I think Cade Smith's about as good as anyone.
And I can't hear his name without thinking Kate Sith. Real ones know.
I don't know that one.
You're not a real one.
I'm not.
Fair enough.
Never claimed to be one.
Scott, how do you rank these 3? Muñoz, Duran, and Cade Smith?
It's probably the hardest group to rank. And I struggled to care enough to even list them off in an order. But the order I have them, since I had to do that, was Andres Muñoz, Cade Smith, Jhoan, Duran.
All right.
They're separated by almost nothing. And I actually have them all within about a round of Mason Miller and Edwin Diaz. I think this top tier are all 5th or 6th rounders, basically.
Yeah, and that's basically they are being drafted a little bit higher than that, but yeah, I think this top 5 is kind of above the rest, obviously. After Smith, there's about a 20 pick drop in ADP to Aroldis Chapman with an ADP of 80, then David Bednar at 83, Josh Hader at 86, and Devin Williams at 89, round 7 to 8 in a 12-team league. I will mention with Hader that he might not be ready to go. And while his ADP here is 86, over the past 2 weeks, which is basically when we learned about the injury, his ADP is 100. So it has been dropping, and rightfully so. For Aroldis Chapman, in his age 37 season, had one of the best seasons of his Hall of Fame career. It was insane. Massive improvement in his control. He threw a lot more strikes, posted career best walk rates, but can he maintain that year over year? David Bednar had a roller coaster of a season, demoted early on with the Pirates. He came back. He looked really good, traded over to the Yankees, eventually took over the closer role there, and he performed really well. 3-pitch mix. Skills are really strong. Josh Hader, I just mentioned, he's kind of a wild card right now. He was having another ridiculous season last year. Then he got shut down with a shoulder strain in August. Over the winter, we heard that he was fully healthy, showed up to spring. Now he's dealing with biceps inflammation. The last report we got was actually earlier today and said he might not be ready for opening day. And then we have Devin Williams, who had a rough season with the Yankees. He lost the closer role multiple times, but to his credit, he finished strong. He signed a 3-year deal with the Mets this offseason to be their closer. I know some people will laugh at this. They'll call me a Mets hater, whatever you want. I just watched Devin Williams pitch for an entire season, and it was not fun. I really do question whether he has the mentality to be a closer on a big market team. That's just me, and I'll throw it out there. Scott, do you target any of this group? Devin Williams, a broken Josh Hader, David Bednar, or Aroldis Chapman?
I'm fine with any as my top closer. They're a little riskier than the ones we've talked about, but I mean, Chapman especially, I like he was obviously elite last year. He has a track record of being elite, and we have a clear explanation for why he struggled the couple years prior to going to the Red Sox, and it has to do with the tightness of his grip. I can't remember which way he went, if he made his grip tighter or looser, but it was one of those two things is what helped him regain the control he lost. And it was like a night and day difference, which clearly the stuff is still there for Chapman. I understand he's in his late 30s and the stuff could always drop off at some point, but you could find, to a certain degree, you can't worry about that with a closer, especially because it's so tenuous for all of them. Like I think we saw last year that Chapman fixed what was wrong with his control, and he's still a stud reliever in that case. So I will take that big discount because I think he's likely to be just as good as the elites. Maybe he's the closer I'm most likely to draft as my number 1. I don't know. As for some of these others here, David Bednar, I can't remember exactly when he came back from the minors, but I can tell you that over his final 46 appearances, David Bednar had a 1.31 ERA, a .85 WHIP, and 12 K per 9. That over 46 appearances. So like what, 3/4 of the season? He was as good as any reliever, and I was tempted to put him in that top tier because of it, but then I thought better of it. You know, David Bednar, he's had his ups and downs over the years, as good as he was for those 3 quarters of the season, I can't feel totally confident he's out of the woods. So I do have him a tier lower, but my confidence in him is as the highest it's ever been, I will say.
So Chapman highlights why the process of ranking relievers is so frustrating for me, because I look at Gavin Williams and the gains he made over his final, 6 or 7 starts that we cite. And the command was much better. The strike rate was much better. And it ends up being about 40 innings. Sandy Alcantara has this really good second half, 70 something innings where the walk rate is much, much lower than it was in the first half. And when it comes to Sandy Alcantara and Gavin Williams, you don't have to pay anything like face value for what they did over those 60 or 40 or whatever innings. Aroldis Chapman, you pretty much do. I mean, I guess there's a mild discount relative to what he did at face value last season, but for the most part, you're not really getting we don't know if last year was real discount for Aroldis Chapman.
I feel pretty confident it was real.
Right. No, and I'm just saying I don't, because it's 60 innings. I don't feel any more confident that Aroldis Chapman fixed himself for good than I do Gavin Williams or Sandy Alcantara, who are much more discounted relative to the quote unquote fixed versions we saw late last season. So I'm just highlighting how small the sample sizes we are dealing with here. If a pitcher has 60, Trevor Rogers is a really good example of a guy who, in a bigger sample size, took a huge step forward. And he's treated very, very skeptically.
It was one issue with Aroldis Chapman. He stopped throwing strikes, and he suddenly started throwing strikes. And that is something that does normalize over a small sample, which doesn't mean he can't have a new problem come up this year. Obviously, there are no guarantees. But he had a clear issue. It wasn't how dominant he could be. It was just, can he throw enough strikes? And he threw a ton of strikes. And
but it went from 15% walk rate over 200 innings the previous 4 seasons to 7% walk rate over 60 innings. That's a massive improvement. It might be real.
Which is why it's more convincing to me.
It's not just from 1 year to the next either. It was a 4-year sample where he could throw strikes, and then out of nowhere he could.
Right. Yeah. To me, that makes it more convincing that, clearly he found the fix.
Maybe. It's not going to be much more skeptical. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to pay this price for Aroldis Chapman. Chris, how much of a discount on Josh Hader do you have to get right now? It's so ambiguous to talk about just because we don't know, but how far would he have to fall for you to consider him?
10th round in a Roto league, I think, around 120.
Okay.
I don't know. It's weird because, yes, it's worrisome that Josh Hader has a biceps injury during spring training. It's always worrisome when a player reports to spring training and immediately has an injury. It was the shoulder last year, and now it's the biceps. I don't, they're clearly connected. They're very close to one another, but I have no idea.
Some kind of compensatory injury or something?
Yeah, it might be. It might also just be a normal thing that happens in spring training, and we'll end up looking back on this as a relatively minor thing for Josh Hader. He hasn't been ruled out for opening day, although it looks unlikely at this point. So I'm not taking him off my draft board entirely, but I am dropping him to the more questionable range of Ryan Helsley and Raisel Iglesias in my reliever rankings.
Okay. Any thoughts here on Devin Williams? Because I revealed mine and they might not be popular ones.
Yeah, I think he's fine. I mean, it was difficult to detect what had gone wrong with him last year, which is why I think anytime the Yankees are involved, right, it's got to be a psychological issue.
Wow. All right, Scott. Jeez.
Well, you were suggesting the same thing.
Well,
that just seemed to be
any big market. He's still remaining in New York, so that's why I think it could be a thing.
And that fits under the category of a psychological issue. Yeah. So that seemed to be what people were defaulting to for lack of any alternative explanation. But there were some mechanical issues going on there. His arm slot had dropped last year, and it seemed like he righted the ship over the final almost 2 months, 19 appearances. He had 34 strikeouts in 18 innings. That's 17 K per 9. That's compared to 6 walks, 2.50 ERA, sub 1 WHIP. Like, the stuff is still clearly there for Devin Williams, and he has enough experience closing that I think he'll be able to overcome this little speed bump. Clearly, the Mets feel the same way.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. Is the Mets gave him a 3-year, $54 million contract? Like that's pretty significant money. That they're not paying Devin Williams as if he's a middle reliever. They're paying him as if he's a closer.
Yeah, I mean, no, he's the guy for sure. It's just, can he avoid those speed bumps once again and get back on track? Because before last year, he was one of the best relievers in baseball, and maybe he just goes back to that. It's possible.
Yeah, it's what's most likely. That's what you obviously can't know. But what seems most likely given the facts in front of us? What seems most likely it was just a little blip, possibly mechanically related. But clearly, there's still a lot of upside there. And if he regresses to the mean is he's a dominant closer, and you can get him a lot cheaper than you've ever been able to get him before.
After Devin Williams, you drop down about 18 picks to a group that starts with Iglesias at ADP 107, Carlos Estevez at 110, and Ryan Helsley at 119. Iglesias is now 36 years old. He signed a 1-year deal to return to the Braves. He lost his closer role early in the season, but then got back on track, and he finished really strong. His final 45 games, 1.25 ERA, a .69 WHIP, 10K per 9. He's already been named the closer. They also have Robert Suarez, who signed a 3-year deal. Carlos Estevez just led baseball with 42 saves. His underlying skills are scary. K- walk rate ranked 111th out of 147 qualified relievers. His 10.6% barrel rate ranked in the 14th percentile, and none of his pitches had a whiff rate above 19%. But he had 42 saves. Ryan Helsley signed a 2-year deal with the Orioles, and he will be their closer, at least to start. Had the 49 saves in 2024, but last year was a disaster. Got traded to the Mets at the deadline. He was really bad with them. Apparently, he was tipping his pitches. If you think he can get back on track, I think there's, clear buying opportunity. It's just, I'm not so sure that I believe that. So, Chris, do you wind up with any of these three? Ryan Helsley, Carlos Estevez, Iglesias.
Estevez, I'm not going to draft. He would have to fall a significant way for me to be willing to take that chance, just because I think the skill set is really weak here relative to the other closers being drafted. I do think it's worth mentioning with Iglesias, and you kind of did, Frank, but he signed a 1-year deal. Robert Suarez did get a 3-year deal. So the Braves are more committed to Robert Suarez in the long run than Iglesias. Does that matter? No, but I think if Iglesias stumbles, it's very likely that Robert Suarez just takes that job and runs with it. So that would be the concern I have. Because you remember last year, the Braves, when Iglesias struggled, nobody else really stepped up. There was no real alternative who can take that job and run with it. I think Robert Suarez can. So that's a real risk for Iglesias. But I think he'll be good enough.
It's a risk, but I just reiterate, final 45 appearances, 1.25 ERA, .69 WHIP, 10K per 9. And
what was weird about that was it was the slider that went wrong for him, and he never got it back. He just stopped throwing it when he was good. So maybe he just doesn't need it.
He had way more pitches than a closer needs, really. And I think he was kind of stubborn about giving up on that slider. But once he finally did, I mean, the results speak for themselves. And something else could go wrong, but that's why it seems like I'm a little more bullish on you guys than Iglesias. Yes, there is a clear fallback, but I don't think it'll come to that because I think he's still really good.
I think it's a really high ceiling for sure with Iglesias. He could just be the closer all year and get his normal 30 to 35 saves and be awesome. Ryan Helsley, I never really loved Ryan Helsley even when he was an elite closer, so I've always struggled with that. He's just got like a lot of moving parts in his delivery, and it's very violent. So he does definitely feel like a guy that once it goes, it's just gone forever. But it's too early to say that that's the case. The Orioles did give him that 2-year contract. They do believe in him. There are not a lot of great alternatives in the Orioles bullpen, so I think Ryan Helsley is probably okay to remain the closer there, but he's not someone I'm super excited about.
If you guys were to draft Iglesias, do you make it a priority to also get Robert Suarez on that team?
this gets into like the handcuff idea in football, and I've always thought like the idea that you have to handcuff your own players is kind of silly, because then you're just using 2 roster spots for 1 guaranteed player, right? And okay, that's fine, but there is something to be said for having someone else's handcuff and being able to benefit from Robert Suarez becoming the closer, and your opponent loses their closer. So I don't think it's the best utilization of resources. Because you can say, yeah, okay, Robert Suarez, he's the handcuff, I'll hang on to him. It actually gets a lot harder to do that in season when you're not starting him.
I don't think I would have the discipline to keep Robert Suarez on my roster. You know, if it happened to work out that Iglesias lost his job within the first 2 weeks, I guess I'm covered. But if he's fine, if he looks fine in mid-April, I'm probably not holding on to Suarez unless it's a really deep league and I just like the ratio help. But
yeah, in a 15-team league, it's fine.
Yeah.
Because Suarez should get a handful of saves. You know, even when Russell Iglesias was the unquestioned closer, he was never like I don't think he's ever had a 40 save season, has he?
I don't think
his save numbers have always been weirdly a little lower than you would expect for how good he is. So there will be room for Robert Suarez to have some value, and he'll, even if he's not the closer at any point, he'll win 5 games and save 5 and be very good probably.
After Helsley, we dropped down 14 picks to the mid-tier at the position. I would say these are definitive second closers on your fantasy team, or maybe not if you wait. Jeff Hoffman with an ADP of 133, Trevor Megill at 134, Emilio Pagan 141, Daniel Palencia 144, Pete Fairbanks at 147, Kenley Jansen at 150. So these are a bunch of names that are pretty bunched up here. I think all of them have upside. I think all come with flaws as well. Jeff Hoffman, he struggled with home runs all of last year. We saw it in Game 7 of the World Series as well. The Blue Jays were non-committal with him earlier in the offseason, but now they've given him a vote of confidence. Trevor Megill, really talented, but has dealt with a lot of injuries in his career. We're not sure he's the closer, as we talked about earlier. Emilio Pagan is back with the Reds. He converted 32 saves last season, but he's an extreme fly ball pitcher in Cincinnati. Also has an inconsistent year-to-year track record. Daniel Palencia had a big breakout with the Cubs. He picked up 22 saves. He's already been named the closer, but there's just not much of a track record here. Pete Fairbanks, 1-year deal with the Marlins. We think he's the closer, but their bullpen usage was just annoying last year, and he's dealt with a lot of injuries, could be traded at some point. Kenley Jansen, we also mentioned, he signed a 1-year deal with the Tigers. Still had 29 saves last year. Sounds like he's the guy, but other talented relievers in that bullpen with Will Vest and Kyle Finnegan. So, Scott, there are 6 names here. Who are your 3 favorites from this group?
I would probably put Jeff Hoffman at the top because I see a path for him being much better. That home run issue, it's not like it doesn't matter, but it was unusual, and otherwise he still looks like the big bat misser he was in Philadelphia. He's on a really good team, obviously. I've been tempted, now that they've given him that vote of confidence, I've been tempted to move him a tier higher than the others. I've resisted so far, but he's definitely my favorite. And then probably Emilio Pagan and Daniel Palencia, just because they were really good last year. Doesn't mean they will be again, but we're at a range of the relief pitcher rankings where if saves are your priority, you can only look so deep into it because either it's going to work again or it's not. And so I would say those are my favorites of these 6, Hoffman, Pagan, and Palencia. I will also say that in a Roto context where I just don't like the value of any of the higher end relievers, which I'm including Aroldis Chapman, David Bednar, Raisel Iglesias, etc. in that group. If it just doesn't work out for me to draft one of them, then I'm okay going with 2 of these guys. I understand they're riskier, and I'm making a priority to get 2. Kind of the idea being I get 2, hopefully 1 works out. I mean, if 2 works out, great, it's possible. But, you'd have to be kind of lucky in that scenario.
Yeah,
I'm comfortable going with 2 here if I have to go cheap at RP.
The one problem there, and the problem with this group is they're so bunched up in ADP that it's, unless you're on an end in a draft, it might be really hard to actually draft two of these guys. Because I feel like the way this tends to work is Hoffman's gone. Okay, now it's time for Palencia. Now it's time for Pagan. Now it's time for Fairbanks. And so it's actually really, I don't think you can go into the draft expecting to get two guys from this tier because you might miss pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, most drafts don't follow ADP that closely.
Sure.
But sure, it's possible that you could just get left out of the run.
Yeah. And I think we're at the point where half of the guys in every tier will probably not end up with 20 saves one way or another in any given tier. And I think that starts with this tier where Megill may not be the closer and he's got injury risk, and Pagan has performance risk, and Palencia has a very limited track record, and Fairbanks seems likely to be traded in the summer. And there's just, we're clearly at the point, and it's the high-end number 2 closers where it's just really easy to see how things go wrong for a lot of these guys.
After Kenley Jansen, we dropped down about 40 picks. We have 4 relievers that are pretty bunched up here. ADP 190 to 205. Dennis Santana, Abner Uribe, Robert Suarez, and Ryan Walker. So Santana took over the closer role once David Bednar was traded. He picked up 16 saves, but his K rate was low and a lot of decent amount of barrels last season. Abner Uribe performed like one of the best relievers in baseball. 167 ERA, 104 whip. Lots of strikeouts, great ground ball rate. But again, we don't know who will be the closer, if there will be a set closer in Milwaukee. Robert Suarez just led the National League with 40 saves and then signed a 3-year, $45 million deal with the Braves. Presumably the closer of the future, but they still have Raisel Iglesias for at least this year. And then Ryan Walker ended 2024 as the closer, started 2025 in the role, but he just was not nearly as effective. As of now, he kind of feels like the incumbent in the Giants bullpen, but I mentioned earlier, read an article that said, the Giants could just go with a committee approach. And that was, from Buster Posey and Tony Vitello. So, Chris, do you find yourself interested in any in this group?
Uribe has to fall a little bit. I don't really have any interest in Santana. I look at him and I'm just not sure what he does well. I know the results have been pretty good the last couple of seasons, but he had this strikeout rate jump once he got to the Pirates in 2024. That disappeared entirely in 2025, was right back to career norms. I just don't, he's not a great ground ball pitcher. I'm not sure what it is that Dennis Santana does that makes him successful in a way that is likely to sustain moving forward. So I'm pretty skeptical there. Ryan Walker, I do want to highlight, I was much more skeptical about the breakout to elite closer argument for Ryan Walker this time last year, but the peripherals were better than the actual numbers. It was a 4.11 ERA versus 3.83 xERA, 3.30 FIP, 3.63 FIP. And for his career, we're now looking at 202 innings at the major league level with a 2.98 ERA, 3.11 xERA. Ryan Walker might just be pretty good, or at least good enough to keep the job. So there's a lot of uncertainty around Ryan Walker and how they're going to use him, but I think he's more or less a fine fallback option at the position. I have some confidence that he'll be able to get the job done.
And this might help support that case here. I was reading earlier about a mechanical fix that Ryan Walker found this winter. Last year, I would start counter-rotating pretty heavily, and that just made it hard to get back to where I need to get to my pitches to do what they need to do and be where they need to be. I just kind of focused on staying more square and having a better direction towards the mound with my upper body, so I don't get too counter-rotated. That helped out a lot, getting my arm to where it needs to be. So, says he found a mechanical fix. We'll find out if it's true or not.
I am fine. If I got a high-end closer, not necessarily like Andres Muñoz, but maybe it's Devin Williams, somebody like that, and I have to focus on other positions, I'm fine making one of Dennis Santana, Ryan Walker, or Sir Anthony Dominguez, who I know is a lot lower in ADP, but I imagine it's on the rise. I'm fine with making any of them my second closer. I'd prefer them as a third closer, but I feel like they're at least secure in their roles to start out. And a lot of times guys who people are writing off because they just don't think they're very talented, end up keeping that job all season. It happens all the time.
Milo Pagan,
Yep.
Robert Suarez, Carlos Estevez.
Yeah. Some saves options going in the 250 to 300 range of ADP. We have Griffin Jax at 266. Again, that's on the rise. Brian Abreu, 276 on the rise. Robert Garcia at 277. Edwin Uceta at 278. Will Vest at 279. And Sir Anthony Dominguez at 280. So over the last week, Griffin Jax, his ADP is 190 with a min pick of 125. And during the same time, Brian Abreu is up to 219. So two names that we are seeing up on the rise here. And then Sir Anthony Dominguez, like the last 3 years, his numbers are kind of mediocre, but he's a set closer. So what do you guys think here of this group?
I mean, Brian Abreu is probably the best pitcher of this group, right?
He's really good.
He's really, really good. He's often a pretty good source of ratios, a lot of strikeouts, 100 strikeouts 3 years in a row. That's very rare for a reliever. So this is one that even if you don't get any saves out of Brian Abreu, he's going to be pretty useful. And he seems like a pretty good bet for at least 7 to 10 saves, given the breakdown we've seen for Hader the last, 8 months or so since that shoulder injury. And there's a chance Brian Abreu, things go really sideways for Josh Hader, and Brian Abreu is just a top 5 closer in baseball. Like that's the upside we're talking about here. So in this range of the draft, I think Brian Abreu is clearly the best option because while, Griffin Jax's median outcome might be a higher save total than Brian Abreu, I think Brian Abreu's ceiling is higher than Griffin Jax's.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Jax has a ton of strikeout potential. Was it 2 years ago? He had like 14K per nine in a lot of innings.
Been really close to 14 the last 2 years for sure.
Yeah.
It was 13.5 last year. He got 95 and 99 strikeouts the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, Abreu's been more consistently dominant, but I think Jax's upside is also really high. But yeah,
I think
maybe a clear.
Abreu's a higher upside just because I think he's more likely to get a 30 save season than Jax.
Like if Hader's just messed up all season. Yeah, that makes sense. I did want to point out with Sir Anthony Dominguez, since this is his range, that he added a splitter last year that kind of brought him to another level in terms of bat missing. It also seemed to add some walks there. So there was a little bit of a trade-off, but that's part of the reason why the White Sox were excited to sign him as their closer.
Mm-hmm. The last 3 years combined for Sir Anthony Dominguez, 3.78 ERA, 130 WHIP, but maybe that splitter can help him get to the next level if he can, throw enough strikes. Let's wrap up here with some sleepers, breakouts, and busts at relief pitcher. And Scott, we will start with you. Any sleepers here? RP.
Sleepers, I guess. I guess Sir Anthony Dominguez is the easiest place to start. If the White Sox are better, which I think they will be a little better, still not very good, but good enough that maybe if they have a true full-time closer, he could get you 25 plus saves. If you want to go more on like a speculative closer, we've kind of touched on those guys already. I might still. I had Edwin Uceta as a breakout before the injury because I thought with the way as well as he finished last season, I thought he was going to be the front runner for saves in Tampa. I think it's fair to call him a sleeper still because so many are going to write him off with this injury. It doesn't sound like a serious injury. Of course, the whole season could go sideways for him, but I think in deep leagues where saves are scarce, Uceta's still absolutely worth targeting.
Chris, sleeper, relief pitcher.
Cody Ponce, Reed Detmers, Ryan Nelson as Sparps, and I will say Abner Uribe, if he counts as a sleeper.
Yeah, that's right.
Ryan Walker.
I wrote down here for myself. Yeah. Who was last name? Ryan Walker?
Ryan Walker.
Gotcha. Yeah, I put down Abner Uribe here as well. I think he winds up as the closer for the Brewers some way, somehow. If it's injuries or he just outperforms Trevor Megill. I just think he's really, really good. Megill is too, but he has, he's never thrown more than 47 innings in a season.
Injuries.
He had the flexor strain in the second half of just last year. So I like that call out on Abner Uribe. All right, a breakout. Scott, breakout, relief pitcher.
Breakout. Let's see. I mean, Sir Anthony Dominguez, but he would have been a fitting choice there as well. I don't know that I have anyone. Like I said, Uceda was the guy you could put Jackson in that category. I don't know that I'm going to be the one paying the most for him, though. Yeah, that's about it.
All right,
Cade
Chris.
Smith.
Yeah, he's kind of like the de facto answer. Yeah,
I mean, it's one that like there's not a ton of room for profit at his price, but if we're going by he will have the best season of his career, then I think Cade Smith is just such an obvious answer.
Yeah, I mean, he's already priced like an elite closer, so I don't.
And he should be,
yeah. I will throw one name out here, Daniel Palencia. I know he doesn't have the longest track record, and he struggled with command before last year, but he broke out last season, and, there's still enough skepticism where the ADP is okay, and if he just builds off of what he did last year and does it over the course of a full season, he very easily could be a top 10 closer for fantasy this year, and he pitches for a really good team. So I do like Daniel Palencia a little bit there. Cade Smith, I think, is an obvious one. Griffin Jax, as long as the ADP doesn't get too high and people keep their expectations in check here, because I think his breakout could be, he's one of the best relievers in baseball, and he gets you 20 to 25 saves. And if he does that, I mean, he'll probably just rate out as like a top 12 relief pitcher, even though he doesn't give you that gaudy save total this season. A bust pick at relief pitcher, Scott?
Carlos Estevez is the obvious one.
Yeah.
So obvious, in fact, that
poor guy.
I could find myself, because I have so little faith in any closer to hold on to their job that I've had a lot of success just targeting the guy everybody hates, and hey, he holds on to his job.
This year's Robert Suarez, Carlos Estevez.
Right. You guys
Kind of
scared
this
me
year's
away
Carlos
from Robert
Estevez.
Suarez last year, but I'm thinking all the years with Kyle Finnegan. Like I made a lot of bank off Kyle Finnegan, just because nobody believed he'd actually stick as the closer, and he kept sticking as the closer. And I think Carlos Estevez is at least better than him. So yes, he is a likely bust. However, if he goes 3 or 4 rounds after he should, I'm probably drafting him. And that might happen pretty often since he's such an obvious bust case.
All right, Chris, bust?
Yeah, bet against the 38-year-old coming off a career season seems like a pretty good bet, and that's Aroldis Chapman. Yeah. I suppose it's not like actually the single best season of his career, but for all intents and purposes, it was pretty close.
Pretty close.
It was the best, objectively the best control of his career. Like, has never been better, and he did that in his age 37 season. It was crazy stuff. Carlos Estevez. Go ahead.
I'll throw Ryan Helsley out there as a
I think that's
bust. Again, if I'm desperate for saves and he's clearly the best guy left, I'm just going to take him and not stress about it so much. But I don't have as much confidence as the industry seems to that he's actually good.
Yeah. I don't know that you can afford to be very pick and choosy at this position, but I mean, there are just names at cost that I just never look to draft.
Yeah, agreed.
Chapman is one of them. Devin Williams is another one. Ryan Helsley is another one. And Carlos Estevez. Like those 4. If I draft any of them this draft season, then something went wrong for me, or everyone else just hates them too. Who are just give me a few names here, your favorite RP3 dart throws in drafts? Like, which of these kind of open bullpens do you like taking shots on?
So not Ryan Walker.
Yeah,
not
Sir
Ryan.
Anthony Dominguez.
Nope, he's a closer.
Okay. Speculative closers.
Brian Abreu, Kirby Yates, and all right, well, I'll stick with those 2 for now.
I love them. I guess I like the Cardinals situation a little more than some of those others. So Riley O'Brien or Jojo Romero, Garrett Clevenger is so much cheaper than the other Rays relief pitcher targets that maybe him. But it would have to be a league of a certain depth for me to even consider these names.
Yep. Kirby Yates for me as well. He was awful last year, nearly 2 home runs per 9, and he's turning 39 in March, but he's 1 season removed from 33 saves and just a ridiculous season with the Rangers. Speaking of the Rangers, I typically target some of their right-handed pitchers here, Chris Martin and Alexis Diaz. They don't have enough lefties in their bullpen. I think that they need to use Robert Garcia whenever there's kind of a lefty pocket. And if that doesn't come up, then maybe they'll just use him in the 9th inning. But I do like targeting some of those Rangers righties. And I don't know that anyone in the D-backs bullpen is good, but I usually just take a shot on one of those guys and hope something sticks. Kevin Ginkel, Paul Sewald, come on down, baby. Let's figure it out. Last name here, and Chris, you mentioned a few, but just your favorite SPARP that you like to target in a head-to-head points league.
Ryan Nelson, for sure. Go ahead.
I was going to say Cody Ponce.
Yep.
Okay.
I still have some faith in Reed Detmers. He was really good out of the bullpen last year. Maybe that can transfer. Probably not. I have maybe been fooled by Reed Detmers more than any player in the history of this job.
Haven't we all, Chris?
But I'm willing to get hurt again. It costs nothing. He can be your last pick in a head-to-head points league.
Made his spring debut here on Monday and didn't look very good, and his velocity was down. So I guess something to watch with Reed Detmers. Braxton Ashcraft. I spoke about him on yesterday's podcast in our SP preview part 3, but he's in the Pirates rotation. He had some prospect pedigree, some really good numbers in the minors before last year, and I'm intrigued by what he can do. So I do like targeting him as a SPARP this season. We are going to wrap there for Scott and Chris. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.